Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Before we speak to some of them, we're going to take you live to Wrexham, where in a few seconds' time, the Prime Minister is due to launch the Welsh Conservative Manifesto. Let's listen in.
Please welcome the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be here in Wrexham today with just 17 days to go until this crucial general election. Just 11 days after that, the European Union wants the Brexit negotiations to begin. The UK's seat at the negotiating table will be filled by me or Jeremy Corbyn. The deal we seek, negotiated by me or Jeremy Corbyn. There will be no time to waste and no time for a new government to find its way. So the stakes in this election are high. Our future prosperity, our standard of living, our place in the world, and the opportunities we want for our children and our children's children are either in the strong hand you grant me by supporting my candidates in this election, or the weak hand of Jeremy Corbyn, backed by the Liberal Democrats, Plaid Cymru and the SNP, who don't want Brexit to succeed. It is your choice, your decision. Every vote for me and my team in this election will be a vote to strengthen my hand in the negotiations to come. Every vote for any other party, Labour, the Liberal Democrats, Plaid Cymru, is a vote to send Jeremy Corbyn into the negotiating chamber on our behalf. And that is the stark reality of the choice that we face, the choice we must focus on over the next 17 days. Because our future prosperity depends on getting the next 5 years right. That is why we need someone representing Britain who is 100% committed to the cause. Not someone who's uncertain or unsure, but someone utterly determined to deliver the democratic will of the British people. Because if we don't get this right, the consequences for the United Kingdom and for the economic security of ordinary working people will be dire. If we do, the opportunities ahead are great. Now, the Welsh Conservative Manifesto I launched today is a plan to make the most of the opportunities together. It is a plan to make Wales and our union stronger. For this manifesto sets out a vision of Britain around which I believe we can all unite. It's the mainstream manifesto of a mainstream party determined to deliver for mainstream Britain. And to all those who work hard and make this country what it is, I say this. If you have a job but don't always have job security, I'm backing you. If you own your own home but worry about paying the mortgage, I'm backing you. If you can just about manage, but worry about the cost of living and getting your children into a good school, I'm backing you. If you feel you've been let down and left behind by politics and government for far too long, I'm backing you. And to all the decent men, women and families you meet on the streets of places like Wrexham, Bridgend, Cardiff and Newport, and countless towns and villages across Wales and across the country, I'm backing you. To those for whom life is often much harder than many seem to think or realise, I'm backing you. To those who want to get on with their lives, to do their best for the children and to be given a fair chance to get on, I'm backing you. I'm backing those who want a more secure and full life. I'm backing those whose only wish is that their children will do better than themselves. And to those that look to their government and their politicians for a little help and support, I'm backing you too. Because too often in the past, ordinary working people have found the help and support they need just isn't there. And I know that sense of disenchantment is particularly acute here in Wales. We saw that when people here in Wrexham and across Wales chose to ignore the hysterical warnings of Labour, Plaid Cymru and Liberal Democrat politicians in Cardiff Bay and voted to leave the EU. We see it now in the way those same politicians refuse to respect that vote as they try to find new ways to put obstacles in our way. And the cause of that emerging gulf is clear. It is because the Labour Party has taken people in Wales for granted for decades. Just as it has, in fact, in other communities across Britain. They've been in charge in Cardiff Bay for nearly 20 years. Some parliamentary constituencies have returned nothing but a Labour MP for a century or more. Welsh Labour have come to believe they have a right to govern. Yet during their time in charge, the performance of Wales's vital public services has fallen further and further behind. The Welsh NHS is failing because Labour cut its budget. The A&E waiting time and urgent cancer treatment targets haven't been met for nearly a decade. Wales's schools are falling further and further behind the rest of the United Kingdom. It's little wonder that Welsh voters chose to send a message to their politicians in the referendum last June. That should have been a wake-up call, but it wasn't. Labour, Plaid Cymru and Liberal Democrat politicians ignored Wales instead. Worse, they closed ranks, with Plaid Cymru propping up Labour in Wales in order to defend the status quo, as they're determined to do in Westminster too. That would put Jeremy Corbyn in power in a weak and unstable coalition of chaos. And you don't negotiate the right Brexit deal for Britain from a position of weakness. Jeremy Corbyn's coalition of chaos would deliver higher taxes, higher debt and higher unemployment. Labour's policies may have been written by Jeremy Corbyn in London, but the people of Wales will get the bill. But it's not just that Jeremy Corbyn is too weak and shambolic to get the right deal for Britain in Europe. It's not just that his fantasy manifesto would leave families across Wales picking up the bill. It's also that even traditional Labour supporters, people like those here in Wrexham and across Wales, who've loyally given the Labour Party their allegiance for generations, people taught by their parents and grandparents that Labour was a party that shared their values and stood up for their community. They look at what Jeremy Corbyn believes and are appalled. They see a party that once believed in hard work, now headed by Jeremy Corbyn, who wants to crush aspiration and desert those who hope for a better life. A party that once stood for our union of nations, now headed by a man who is willing to collaborate with separatists in order to get into power. A Labour Party that first established our independent nuclear deterrent to keep our country safe, now led by a man who wants to get rid of it and even talks about abolishing the army. The prospect of him walking through the door of number 10, flanked by an avowed Marxist like John McDonnell and an incompetent Diane Abbott, all propped up by the Liberal Democrats, Plaid Cymru and others, should scare us all. The risk is real and the stakes are high. A loss of just 6 seats will cost my government our majority and create a hung parliament. Just 6 fewer MPs means a hung parliament in which the minor parties will flock to prop Jeremy Corbyn up. That will deliver nothing but chaos. It means Jeremy Corbyn, imposed as Prime Minister, propped up by the Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru and SNP, all of whom oppose the decision to leave the EU and want to fight to keep us in. And who knows what deals Jeremy Corbyn will do to get their support, because we know he would do anything to get their support. And after the weekend, we now know the tactics he is prepared to adopt to get into number 10. He has no strong plan for Britain, which takes on the country's long-term challenges, like I have. No, he wants to sneak over the line by manipulating the fears of old and vulnerable people and falsely claiming that families will lose their house as a result of our social care policy. That is shameful, and it is a shameful abdication of responsibility. So today, I want to put an end to Jeremy Corbyn's fake claims and clarify any doubts about our social care policy and the family home. My manifesto is honest and upfront about our challenges. It includes plans to strengthen the social care system with more and sustainable funding to cope with the long-term pressures caused by the fact that we are an ageing society. Jeremy Corbyn wants to duck this reality and play politics. But there will be 2 million more people over 75 years old in Britain over the next decade alone. Our social care system will collapse unless we make some important decisions now about how we fund it. That is why we have to act. And it is why, to give people security, we included in our plans measures to make sure nobody has to sell the family home to pay for care. And we also said that we would protect £100,000 of your savings. So however expensive your care, you can pass something on to your family. Let's be clear. This plan replaces the existing system, where people often get poor quality care and stand to lose almost all their savings and assets, including the family home. This plan addresses the worry people have when they have a loved one with a long-term condition and they don't know how they're going to afford to care for them. So these are good and sensible plans. They provide the beginning of a solution to social care without increasing taxes on younger generations. And I should say, we are the only party in this election prepared to face up to the reality of our ageing society and offer a long-term solution. But since my manifesto was published, the proposals have been subject to fake claims made by Jeremy Corbyn. The only things he has left to offer in this campaign are fake claims, fear and scaremongering. So I want to make a further point clear. This manifesto says that we will come forward with a consultation paper, a government green paper. And that consultation will include an absolute limit on the amount people have to pay for their care costs. So let me reiterate. We are proposing the right funding model for social care. We will make sure nobody has to sell their family home to pay for care. We will make sure there's an absolute limit on what people need to pay. And you will never have to go below £100,000 of your savings, so you will always have something to pass on to your family. And what is Jeremy Corbyn's plan? He promises a nonsensical fantasy policy that can only be funded through massive tax rises on younger generations. In fact, just recently, he threatened to increase the basic rate of income tax for millions of people from 20 to 25% to fund social care. That tells you everything you need to know about Jeremy Corbyn's answer to the problem. The alternative is that he sticks to the status quo, which too often provides poor care and leaves old and vulnerable people having to sell their family homes. This manifesto, our manifesto, provides a better way. With it, I'm leading Britain, while Mr Corbyn is simply scaremongering among the elderly and the vulnerable. It is a plan for a stronger union and a stronger Wales. A plan to respond to and deliver on the concerns of ordinary working people everywhere. A plan to build a country that works for everyone, not just a privileged few. It is a detailed programme for government, rooted in the hopes and aspirations of ordinary working people in towns and cities across the country. A clear plan to meet the big challenges we face together. Because unlike the other parties, we are being upfront and honest with the British people about the scale of the task we face. That's what leadership is about. Not ducking the big decisions, painting grand and fantastical visions, pretending you can have something for nothing, and no difficult decisions need to be made. Leadership means being straight with people about the challenges ahead and the hard work required to overcome them. And that is what this manifesto does. It sets out the 5 great challenges faced by our country. 1, the need for a strong economy. 2, responding to Brexit and a changing world. 3, tackling enduring social divisions. 4, responding to an ageing society. And 5, facing up to fast-changing technology. And it sets out what we will do to address each one. And these are challenges that we all face right across our United Kingdom. And the lesson of Britain's history is that we all do best when we tackle challenges together, united. That's how we've overcome obstacles in the past, and that is how we will make a success of our future. In setting out our plan, we're offering a vision for our United Kingdom, not just for the next 5 years, but for the years and decades beyond. A country where everyone has the economic security they need and the chance to live a secure and full life. A prosperous country where each generation can do better than the last. But that all starts with getting the right Brexit deal, one that works for the whole United Kingdom. When I sit down with the Prime Ministers, Presidents and Chancellors of Europe, I will do so as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. When I fight for the best deal, it will be a deal that works for the whole United Kingdom. And when I talk about a better future for our country, I mean the whole United Kingdom. Because unlike Jeremy Corbyn, I believe heart and soul in this great union of nations. And if you give me your backing to represent you at the negotiating table in Europe in the months ahead, I will fight for every person in this United Kingdom, young and old, rich and poor, city, town, country, and all the villages and hamlets in between. It is my fierce determination to get the right deal for every single person in this country. And every vote for me and my team in this election will strengthen my hand in the negotiations and help me deliver the right deal for Britain. A vote for anyone else is a vote to send Jeremy Corbyn to represent us in Europe instead. Because it may say Labour, Liberal Democrat or Plaid Cymru on the ballot, but it's Jeremy Corbyn that gets the vote. And if we get Brexit right, if we are strong in our negotiations with the EU, we can do more to build a stronger Britain and a stronger Wales here at home. Too often in the past, UK governments have tended to devolve and forget. The government I lead will put that right. That is why this manifesto contains clear commitments to spread opportunity and prosperity beyond London and the South East, and to improve the economic security of people here in Wales. Why it includes a specific commitment to bring forward a North Wales growth deal, connecting North Wales with Northern England to encourage cross-border working, building on the success of the Cardiff City deal and Swansea Bay City deal that I signed in South Wales just a few weeks ago. It's why we're committed to bringing down the barriers to trade and commerce between South Wales and the wider UK by scrapping the tolls on the 7 crossings for good, helping 25 million drivers who use the crossings every year and providing a £100 million boost to the local economy. It's why we will introduce a new UK Shared Prosperity Fund, replacing ineffective and restrictive EU structural funds with a new targeted scheme, whose sole purpose will be to reduce the inequalities that exist within and between the 4 nations of our United Kingdom. And it's why, as we leave the European Union, we will ensure that power sits closer to the people of the UK than ever before. That is why, as powers are repatriated to the UK, we expect to be able to increase the decision-making powers of the Welsh Government, as long as no new barriers to living and doing business within our own union are created. It's why the government I lead will ensure the modern industrial strategy that we are pioneering will benefit people, towns and businesses across Wales. That will help to create the high-skilled, high-paid jobs of the future and give our young people every chance of getting on and leading a full and happy life. As Prime Minister of this United Kingdom, that is what I want for everyone in our country. That is because of a simple truth. Across the United Kingdom, we may be 4 nations, but at heart we are one people, and we achieve more together. We all have a stake in each other's success. We all have a stake in our shared future. That is why this election is so important, because this election, more than any other, is about the long-term future of our country, not just about the next 5 years, but the years beyond. Not just about our future, but the future of our children and our children's children too. We can get the best possible deal from Brexit. We can redouble our efforts to make things better here at home. And we can show that with hard work, with a clear vision and the right plan, a mainstream, active, determined government can deliver a better, more secure future for ordinary working people across this land. We need strong and stable leadership to do it. There are just 17 days to go. 11 days after that, the Europeans want the Brexit talks to begin. And the UK's seat at the negotiating table will be filled by me or Jeremy Corbyn. The deal we seek, negotiated by me or Jeremy Corbyn. There will be no time to waste and no time for a new government to find its way. So focus on that choice. Support my candidates here in Wales. Give me the strong hand I need to deliver Brexit. Give me that strong hand and I will deliver for Britain. Give me your support. And with confidence in ourselves and a unity of purpose in our country, we can and we will go forward together. Thank you. Now, I'll take some questions from the media. Laura.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News. You have today, again, and repeatedly all the way through this campaign, attacked Jeremy Corbyn for being uncertain and unsure, to use your phrase. But you have just announced a significant change to what was offered in your manifesto, saying there will now be the possibility of a cap on social care that was not in the plans that was announced just 4 days ago. That doesn't look so strong and stable, Prime Minister, does it? It looks rather like panic in the face of opposition. And can you tell us today where the cap on social care costs will be set to set families' minds at rest?
Well, first of all, what we are doing and what we set out in our manifesto is a long-term plan for actually securing a sustainable future for social care in this country. So I said, if you just look at the figures of the numbers, even the number of over 75-year-olds, that will be 2 million more within the next decade, our social care system will collapse unless we address this problem. And we can't leave it to the future. We have to start dealing with it now. That's why I want to fix it, and I'm going to fix it. And the plans that we set out were very clear in the manifesto. You can look in the manifesto, Laura. I think it was page 64 or 65, we said we'd issue a green paper. And of course, within that green paper, we'll be consulting on the details of the proposals and the principles that we have set out. What is important is that we have seen over the last few days Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party trying to scare vulnerable and elderly people by telling them and trying to suggest nobody is going to have to pay for their care. Nobody is going to have, while they are alive, nobody is going to have to lose their family home. We will ensure that people are able to pass on savings to their children. That is proposals that we have put forward. I think it is the right way forward because it is the right way to deal with this problem that we all face. And we need to deal with it now. Robert Sky.
Thanks very much. Robert Nisbet from Sky News. You talk about a coalition of chaos, but isn't this a manifesto of chaos now? What else are you going to clarify within the next few days? And also, what message do you think this is sending out to those prime ministers and chancellors around Europe that you are prepared to be so flexible with what you originally set down in stone?
I think the message that our manifesto sets out is that as a party and as a leader, I and we, the party, are prepared to be honest with people about the challenges that we face and are prepared to set forward the hard decisions that have to be taken, but a way forward that ensures we are looking after the interests of ordinary working people across this country. And I think what people will see across this country is that they do have a choice. They have a choice between Jeremy Corbyn being propped up by votes for any other party in this country, or a government led by me, which will provide that strong and stable leadership, which will ensure that we're being honest with people about the challenges we face and have a plan to fix those. That's the important thing. We will fix those challenges, we will address them, and we will also build a stronger Britain and a better future. Emily.
Prime Minister Emily Morgan, ITV News. You say that you are prepared to take the difficult decisions, but you have just buckled under pressure over your social care plans. Isn't this U-turn really just a cynical attempt to stop voters leaving you in droves?
Look, first of all, let's be clear. We have not changed the principles that we set out in the manifesto. We're very clear about the principles on which this system will operate and will be based. What we have done is clarified that in the Green Paper, which will be a consultation document, we will have a limit, upper limit, absolute limit on the amount that people will pay for care. But the basic principles remain absolutely the same as when they were put in the manifesto and announced last week. That nobody is going to have to pay for their care while they're alive, that nobody is going to have their family home sold while they're living in it, and that everybody will be able, where they have that, to pass £100,000 onto their families. That's 4 times the limit that currently exists at the moment. This is a good arrangement. It ensures that people can pass savings to their families. It ensures they have the peace of mind, rather than sitting there month after month worrying about the money that's going out of their bank account to pay for their care and worrying about what's going to happen in the future. This takes that worry away from people, but it also ensures that we have a sustainable system for funding social care for the future. That's the challenge we need to address. We're the only party that is doing it. Michael.
Michael Crick, Channel 4 News. I don't recall a U-turn on a manifesto in any election campaign. Now we've had national insurance and this. As Margaret Thatcher might have said, U-turn, or didn't say, U-turn if you want to, the lady is for turning. Doesn't this show that you are really weak and wobbly, not strong and stable? Can you give us an idea of what the cap will be? 100,000? 200,000? 500,000? Don't the people of this country have a right to know what the cap will be?
We have not changed the principles of the policy that we set out in our manifesto. Those policies remain exactly the same. There will be aspects of how this operates that we will consult on through the Green Paper. We were honest that we were going to have a Green Paper and that we would be consulting people on how the system operates. What we have done, which other parties have singularly failed to do, is to recognise the challenge that we face, to respect the needs and concerns of the British people, and to provide a long-term plan for sustainable social care, which means that elderly people in this country won't have to worry about how their social care will be paid for in the future. Now, do we have the Daily Post here before I go to the other? Yes.
Shane Brennan, Daily Post. What guarantees can you give to Welsh farmers and manufacturers that they will have access to a tariff-free market after Brexit?
Well, we want to ensure that we negotiate a comprehensive free trade agreement with the remaining European Union. We want that. I mean, we obviously will be working to have a tariff-free and frictionless a trade arrangement with the rest of the remaining member states of the European Union after we leave the EU. What we will also provide for Welsh farmers and for farmers across the United Kingdom is we will be able, across the United Kingdom, to decide a support system for farming that actually works for Welsh farmers, for farmers across the rest of the United Kingdom. It won't be a system somebody else has devised for a wider group. It will be for us to be able to have that system of support for farmers and to ensure that support that is being provided is as effective as possible. Chris.
Chris Hope, The Telegraph. Two quick questions, Prime Minister. Can you answer yes or no to this question? Will anything else in the manifesto change between now and June the 8th? And the second question, quickly, is why, as Home Secretary, did you grant asylum to the Libyan man who was later arrested by police for the murder of Yvonne Fletcher? Well, on the latter point, there are rules about how asylum is granted, and any decisions that are taken legally and in accordance with the law of this country. And on the first question, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We are offering a long-term solution for the sustainability of social care for the future. We are ensuring that elder people, will not have to worry. They will be able to ensure that their care, whether it's in the home or for them to go into a home, is being paid for, and they won't have to worry about those bills month after month after month. And they will have the confidence of knowing that they can pass £100,000 of savings on to their children. Nothing has changed. We will consult on how the system operates, and we will do that through a Green Paper. Anybody else? Yes, sorry, I can't see who. I think that's the last hand that I saw up, so.
Hi there, Jessica Elgott from The Guardian. If in case I'm missing something, this tax, or this dementia tax, would apply to someone who dies a longer death from dementia. But if you die a longer death from cancer, you would have the inheritance tax threshold is £1 million, whereas it reduces to 100,000 in this case. That's still the case, isn't it, even with a cap?
Look, I'm sorry, you're using terms that have been used by the Labour Party to try and scare people in this country. This is a system that will ensure that people who are faced with the prospect of either requiring care in their own home or needing to go into a home for care are able to see that support provided for them and don't have to worry on that month-by-month basis about where the funding is coming from. They won't have to sell their family home while they're alive. They won't have to be worrying, as I say, about those sums of money going out of the bank account each month, and they will be able to pass savings on to their children. This is a policy which ensures sustainability for our social care system going into the future. And we need that, because our system will collapse with our ageing society unless we do take the decisions we need. As I said when I was speaking, the only suggestion that Jeremy Corbyn made about paying for social care was to put up the taxes, the basic rate of tax, from 20p to 25p, so younger generations would have been paying for that. Thank you.
Well, Theresa May there, at times quite animated, almost frustrated that she was failing, it seems, on the face of it, failing to convince some of the journalists that this was an exercise in clarification rather than something more substantive like a U-turn.
Yeah, Channel 4 re-quoting the Thatcher quote, slightly changing it, suggesting that this is very clearly a U-turn. And also towards the end there, Theresa May's voice rising a little. You could see that she was quite angered.
Yeah. Let's get the reaction of Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn a short while ago.
A Tory U-turn on social care would be extremely welcome, because I want this country to face up to its responsibilities to those who need care, either frail elderly, those with special needs, those with severe disabilities, those with learning difficulties. And our proposals are that we will refund social care, putting emergency money into it now so those million people waiting for social care don't wait. And we won't get involved in this horrible policy the Tories are putting forward, which will actually damage families and family income, damage people, break up relationships. All kinds of horrible things will happen from their very dangerously ill-thought-out social care policy. And if George Osborne is at last doing something useful in his life of supporting proper funding of social care, then thank you, George, for that. And I urge him to read very carefully what's in our manifesto on social care. Rachel, thanks for your point.
Let's go to Westminster. Our political editor, Faisal Islam, got an early steer on this story. Faisal, will we look back, do you think, potentially, might we look back on today as the day that an election campaign which hitherto had been rather dull and tedious burst into life?
It's much more than that, Colin. We've simply never had a situation where a key manifesto claim has been clarified, reversed in some way, U-turn, some would argue, before the election, 3 days after this document was carefully produced. One of the key outputs of that, certainly as understood by everyone who was present, who was briefed on the policy before, that the Dilnot cap of 72,000, which is existing government policy, was going, that is now has been parked by what the Prime Minister has said. I know no precedent of this happening before, but clearly the Prime Minister and the Conservative team have felt the need to clarify it. We've been reporting over the weekend that I can quote a sitting Labour MP in a key Conservative attacked target, telling me that it had gone down like a bucket of dog sick and had reopened the game. They had been quite despondent about their chances, but suddenly they were finding pensioners who were going over from UKIP to the Conservatives, Labour to the Conservatives because of Brexit, some of the reasons that Theresa May was explaining, they were finding them open to the conversation, not just about the social care plans, but also about the winter fuel allowance, which the Prime Minister did not choose to clarify there, the number of millions of people who might find it taken away from them. So on this question of whether or not it is a U-turn, Prime Minister saying very clearly nothing has changed, repeating nothing has changed. Well, if you have a look at the briefing put out by Conservatives the night before the manifesto launch, it says very clearly of the new plans, we believe this is a fairer, more equitable than the current system and the cap recommended by the Dilnot report. It very clearly contrasts the system that was announced and briefed into the papers as being more equitable and fairer than the cap recommended by the Dilnot report. Every single newspaper reporting that on the morning of the manifesto launch reported that the cap, which would have limited the exposure of any estate to paying the social care bill, that had gone, and Andrew Dilnot responded to that. There was no argument about that. There was no debate about that. Nobody phoned anyone up saying, actually, the cap is staying. In the manifesto itself, there is a reference. It is slightly more vague in terms of the reference to the Dilnot report. I'm going to read it out. It says, we consider it more equitable within and across the generations than the proposals following the Dilnot report, which mostly benefited a small number of wealthier people. That is a clear reference to the cap, but it doesn't say it explicitly. So maybe there's some wriggle room around there. But I think it's fair to say that the original proposal that came out of the manifesto was that the cap was gone. The Prime Minister has now reintroduced the idea of a green paper having an absolute limit on the payments being made, but she would put no numbers on that. And you're right, it was quite a moment. A number of questions from the media, as you'd expect, with the unprecedented rowing back of a manifesto pledge. The Prime Minister saying that the general approach outlined in this manifesto stays, which is a long-term plan for her to engage with a tough nut to crack, and she is doing it and Jeremy Corbyn is not. But I mean, it is quite an extraordinary moment, and we still don't have the numbers to clarify. But clearly what's happening is that candidates, Conservative candidates, want some ammunition to be able to fight back from what is a Labour, Liberal Democrat and SNP counterattack on them. And it's really rather interesting, isn't it? Now, you set this against other issues too, which is the extent to which this proposal was circulated around the cabinet. We believe it was not. It was held in a very tight circle. Was it even tested by the Conservative spinners and the pollsters and the people that go out and find the voters that matter and will swing this election? Did they even test this proposal with them? Because I think all the feedback I have got from people off the record from Conservatives, on the record from other candidates, is that it's gone down very badly and has provided an opening for Labour and Lib Dem candidates in some seats that some had written off. So tremendously interesting that she's done this. We don't have a precedent for it. We'll go back and look through the precedents to see if this has happened before. Theresa May defending the idea that she is strong and stable, saying that it's Jeremy Corbyn that's unsure and uncertain. But on this, and remember it was the landmark policy of her manifesto launch, it does seem that the need for clarification at the minimum, what seems to be a reversal on a key aspects of this, it seems to be pretty clear, at least from the briefing documents that were given out the night before.
Faisal, thanks a lot.
Well, let's talk now to our economics editor, Ed Conway, who's looked at the Conservative manifesto change over social care. Ed, it's difficult, isn't it, to do the maths, because as Theresa May was pushed at that press conference, she won't say what the new cap on spending will be, but this will affect the amount of money that they thought was going to come in from this policy, won't it?
It will do, and we'll have a look into the precise fiscal implications over the course of the day. But I mean, this is not an inexpensive policy, as we know from the Dillnet report itself. I've got the manifesto here, and we can just kind of reprise some of the things that Faisal was talking about, and about the question of whether there was any hint within the manifesto that this might be coming up. I won't necessarily spoil that for you, although perhaps you can guess of what the answer is. There's quite a lot about the ageing society as it was, so we're digging into the manifesto itself from last week here. A lot about the ageing society, many pages about that, and indeed there was much about social care within this manifesto. And in fairness to Theresa May as well, it did mention that there was going to be a forthcoming green paper addressing system-wide issues of care and variation in practice. So we do have some detail there within the manifesto about a green paper coming up. However, where is this cap that has now been talked about today? Frankly, it is nowhere to be seen. As you can see here, it does run through this manifesto 3 points, 3 kind of bases. Sorry, I've made a bit of a mark there. 3 bases, 1, 2, 3, on which the new Conservative government would look at the social care systems. So I'll scroll that down a little bit so you can see it. You've got, first of all, that they're going to sort out the funding in the system. You've got, second of all, this capital floor, so the £100,000 floor beyond which your savings won't be dug into. That's different from a cap, bear in mind. Cap is very different from that. And then third of all, this idea that people will not have to sell their home in their lifetime. Now, let's compare this, the manifesto, with the press release that we have just received for the Conservative Party talking about these changes. So here we are, Prime Minister, Security and Dignity and Knowledge. In the manifesto, don't forget, there were 3 key points about what they're planning to do. In this one, 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually, suddenly, we've had a new one added to it. Social care will get the right funding model. That was there in the first one. No one will have to sell their family home to pay for their care. That was there too. No one will have to go below £100,000 of their saving. But now look at the big one here that's just been added. We will make sure there will be an absolute limit on what people need to pay for their care. That's all they say, an absolute limit. They don't say anything about how much, and there is very little in the way of detail, which underlines that this is a new edition. We had 3 points, 3 key points that were there in the manifesto. As Faisal said, the briefing notes that were handed out beforehand, before we got the manifesto, were quite clear about the fact that they weren't necessarily going to be looking at the Dilnot recommendations. Of course, Andrew Dilnot did a big report recommending precisely what Theresa May is referring to today, a cap, and that wasn't there within the manifesto itself. And just finally, that point that Faisal referred to there, Andrew Dilnot did get a mention in the manifesto itself, but it said, we consider these proposals, the 3 they're talking about here, the ones without a cap, more equitable than the bits in the Dilnot report. So it's pretty clear when you look at the manifesto, this wasn't here. It looks to have been ruled out, if not explicitly, then very much implicitly. And lo and behold, it's suddenly changed and a cap has been added, well, in the last few hours, one sees.
Ed, thanks very much.
Well, let's turn to our senior political correspondent, Robert Nisbet, who threw a question at the Prime Minister during that press conference in Wrexham. Joins us now. Robert, very good afternoon to you. When you offer up clarification...
I've no idea.
Robert, I hope you can hear us. When you offer clarification, as the Prime Minister did, I suppose the problem then is that people want complete clarification, and in this instance, they'll want a number.
That's absolutely right. I mean, they wanted a number. That was the first question that was asked. You know, what is the cap? At what level it's going to be set? And if she didn't give a number, then, of course, we were all going to be saying, well, she hasn't even thought of the number. This is all just being done on the back of a fag packet. And this is the issue, the problem that she has. She's talking about the Conservative Party setting themselves out as the party that will take realistic choices, that will see the problems in front of them, such as the enormous costs of social care, and will make bold decisions on how to deal with it. The problem is, after just 4 days of intense scrutiny of this proposal, even though, as Ed said, there was a mention of the Green Paper in their manifesto, there was no mention of the word cap. There was a mention of the word ceiling. So if they had a cap in mind, why didn't they put that next to the £100,000 ceiling figure? And that is why all the journalists in there, and I have to say some of the Tory activists in there as well, were murmuring when the Prime Minister made that remark. She's calling it a clarification. I think we can quite clearly call it a U-turn. One man came up to me just as we were leaving. He had a Conservative rosette on, and he said, you skewered her there with that question. And let's just remember what I said to her. I said, well, you're talking about a coalition of chaos potentially with Jeremy Corbyn, should he get into power, propped up by Plaid Cymru and the SNP, etc. But isn't this now a manifesto of chaos? And what message does that send out to the people who we're going to be negotiating with around the table when the Brexit negotiations start in 11 days' time? And this was her answer.
I think the message that our manifesto sets out is that as a party and as a leader, I and we, the party, are prepared to be honest with people about the challenges that we face and are prepared to set forward the hard decisions that have to be taken, but a way forward that ensures we are looking after the interests of ordinary working people across this country. And I think what people will see across this country is that they do have a choice. They have a choice between Jeremy Corbyn being propped up by votes for any other party in this country, or a government led by me, which will provide that strong and stable leadership, which will ensure that we're being honest with people about the challenges we face and have a plan to fix those. That's the important thing. We will fix those challenges, we will address them, and we will also build a stronger Britain and a better future.
Robert, in time this will blow over, but in a sense the persistent question might be, how did this happen? How did we end up with this kind of situation? What does it tell us about the modus operandi of this Prime Minister? Suggestions in the newspapers that John Godfrey, her political chief, was in the dark on this. And it begs that question, whether you've got a Prime Minister who is making key strategic decisions without consulting enough.
And that was certainly the criticism after the national insurance climbed down as well, that perhaps Theresa May, when she was in the Home Office, had a very tight circle of advisors around us to whom she referred. But running a department is very different to running an entire government, and that perhaps she isn't casting the net out wide enough when she is testing policies, relying on a small group of people, specifically her chiefs of staff, Nick Timothy being one of them, for setting out the main ideological thrust discussed, but not actually going through the detail with other people who may say, well, Prime Minister, let's just think about that for a second. We have detected in Sky News some unease, talking to some Conservative candidates, saying that the conversation has turned on the doorstep from Brexit within the last 4 days and Jeremy Corbyn, and on to the social care proposals, with people either being confused about them or very worried about them, and the nest egg that potentially some of these people could pass on to their children. How much of their estate would be eaten away should they get an illness or a condition such as dementia or Alzheimer's? So it's just that level of concern that perhaps had she consulted more widely, some people may have said to her, maybe we just need to focus group this, maybe we need to be more or less precise in the wording and talk more about the Green Paper without putting a £100,000 figure on. If activists are coming up to journalists after events like this at manifesto launches and congratulating us on difficult questions to the Prime Minister, then you know that you have witnessed an election moment. And I really do believe, Colin, that was one today. She was starting to look rattled and angry towards the end. Nothing has changed, she said in one word, almost shrilly, but you could hear that she was starting to lose her coherence, starting to lose her fluency in the answers to some of those questions. The Conservatives and her team will know that today was a very difficult moment for them indeed.
It's a wobbly Monday. Robert, thanks very much.
Well, let's get some reaction from the other parties. The Liberal Democrat leader, Tim Farron, a little earlier called for a national cross-party campaign to combat what he calls the Conservative dementia tax.
9 out of 10 homes in this country would be hit by the Conservative dementia tax. It's why today I'm launching a campaign working alongside many charities and others beyond politics to try and prevent the dementia tax. The dementia tax is kind of what happens when you have a party that is so confident it's going to win, it thinks it can get away with anything. And parties that get enormous majorities in Parliament are parties that make massive mistakes. It's not just a massive mistake, it's a cruel attack on vulnerable people right the length and breadth of this country. And we just have just over 2 weeks to stop the dementia tax. I'm determined to do so.
But since my manifesto was published, the proposals have been subject to fake claims made by Jeremy Corbyn. The only things he has left to offer in this campaign are fake claims, fear and scaremongering. So I want to make a further point clear. This manifesto says that we will come forward with a consultation paper, a government green paper. And that consultation will include an absolute limit on the amount people have to pay for their care costs. So let me reiterate. We are proposing the right funding model for social care. We will make sure nobody has to sell their family home to pay for care. We will make sure there's an absolute limit on what people need to pay.
I've been getting away